In 1969, Milt Macklin, a reporter for an adventure magazine, traveled to New Guinea with his film crew to shoot a documentary about a mysterious disappearance in the region. His ambitious goal wasn't just to tell the story. He wanted to find the missing person and capture it on film, hoping this discovery would make his documentary truly groundbreaking. Milt and his team scoured the area, filming extensively as they searched. But despite their efforts, the missing person was never found. Disheartened, Milt returned home and stored all the footage away, never bothering to watch it. The project, along with the mystery, faded into obscurity. Fast forward 40 years, and that forgotten footage was unearthed by another documentary crew investigating the same disappearance. As they began reviewing Milt's old reels, they discovered something so shocking that it completely changed the narrative of the case. What they found not only deepened the mystery, but also revealed disturbing truths about the missing person. Today, I'll take you through the story of what was uncovered in that footage and, more importantly, what it revealed about this long-lost individual. Brace yourself, this story is as chilling as it is unsettling. Let's dive in. On the morning of Saturday, November 18, 1961, a 23-year-old man named Michael Rockefeller faced an unsettling challenge. Standing on a handcrafted catamaran, a boat made of two canoes tied together, Michael yanked repeatedly on the pull cord of its outboard motor. But no matter how hard he tried, the engine refused to restart. Without power, the boat and its small crew began drifting farther and farther out into the vast Arafura Sea. As if that weren't bad enough, the catamaran itself was beginning to sink. Just minutes earlier, the crew had been peacefully navigating the scenic jungle-lined coast of New Guinea. However, as they crossed a treacherous stretch of choppy water where a muddy river emptied into the sea, powerful waves crashed against the boat, the flooding waves stalled the motor, and as more water poured in, the boat's buoyancy diminished, leaving Michael and his crew stranded and vulnerable. Michael's journey to this remote and dangerous region wasn't by chance. His fascination with the Asmat tribe, an indigenous group in New Guinea known for their intricate artwork, had drawn him here. Specifically, he was captivated by the Asmat's bispoles, towering wooden carvings depicting men standing on each other's shoulders. These poles were not merely art, but sacred objects believed to hold the souls of fallen warriors. According to Asmat tradition, these souls remained trapped in the poles until avenged by the tribe, making the bispoles an integral part of their spiritual and cultural identity. Months earlier, Michael had visited the Asmat tribe and believed he had struck a deal to trade his goods, tobacco, fishing line, candy, and other Western items, for one of these coveted bispoles. However, the tribe never delivered on the agreement. Determined to claim what he considered rightfully his, Michael returned to the area. Yet, as he sat aboard the sinking catamaran, staring at the muddy shoreline slipping farther into the distance, the bispole was the last thing on his mind. Survival had become his immediate priority. The crew consisted of Michael, a French anthropologist named René, and two teenage Asmat guides, Simon and Leo. Each of them took turns trying to restart the engine, but their efforts were in vain. Finally, Simon and Leo suggested their only hope was to abandon the catamaran and swim the half-mile to shore. Time was critical. They were drifting out to sea so quickly that waiting any longer could make the swim impossible. However, this plan had its complications. René was a poor swimmer, and Michael was hesitant to leave the boat behind. The catamaran held not only his supplies but also potential bargaining tools for future interactions with the Asmat tribe. Despite knowing the boat would inevitably sink, Michael struggled with the idea of abandoning it and his possessions. Ultimately, it was decided that Simon and Leo would swim to shore alone to seek help, while Michael and René stayed with the boat. Moments later, the two teenagers plunged into the choppy sea and began their arduous swim. As Michael watched them disappear into the distance, he was struck by how far he was from home, both physically and mentally. Months in the harsh jungle had taken their toll. He was sunburned, filthy, and exhausted, with calloused hands from endless rowing. Yet despite his deteriorating condition, this isolated, perilous existence was far removed from the privileged life he had once known. Michael wasn't from New Guinea, or anywhere nearby. He hailed from America, a country where his family was one of the most famous, influential, and wealthiest in history, the Rockefellers. His grandfather, John D. Rockefeller, was an oil magnate who, at one point, was the richest man in the world. Michael's father, Nelson Rockefeller, was the governor of New York at the time and would later become vice president of the United States. Despite his extraordinary lineage and access to virtually unlimited resources, Michael wasn't interested in living the life of a Rockefeller. Instead, he found his purpose in the uncharted territories of New Guinea. 7 months prior, Michael had visited New Guinea with a team of Harvard filmmakers documenting a remote tribe. This trip ignited his passion for adventure, even after a harrowing experience where he was accidentally shot in the shoulder with an arrow during a tribal battle. Remarkably, Michael never informed his family about the incident, fearing they might retaliate against the tribespeople. For Michael, the people of New Guinea became his people, and he held immense respect for their culture. After the Harvard filmmakers wrapped up their documentary and returned to the U.S., Michael decided to stay behind. Around the same time, his father opened the Museum of Primitive Art in New York, showcasing artwork from regions like New Guinea. While Western audiences often viewed these cultures as primitive, Michael saw their art as an expression of brilliance and humanity. He believed his mission was to gather and share this artwork, hoping it would bridge the cultural divide and foster respect for the tribespeople. Teaming up with René, a French anthropologist, Michael traveled across New Guinea to collect artistic treasures for his father's museum. His determination was unshaken, even as danger loomed. On one particular journey, Michael and René faced a life-threatening situation. Their catamaran began to sink, forcing them to bail water desperately. As the vessel flipped over, they clung to the upturned hull. Michael ingeniously strapped a gas canister to his belt for buoyancy while they awaited rescue. But as hours turned to days, the outlook grew bleaker. By morning, Michael decided on a bold plan. Despite being at least 5 to 10 miles from shore and facing turbulent waters, he resolved to swim for help. He attached another gas canister to his belt and reassured René that he would make it, urging him to hold on until help arrived. René begged him to stay, but Michael, confident in his abilities, set off. That night, René was finally rescued after a plane spotted him and his overturned catamaran. However, Michael was nowhere to be found. When René explained that Michael had attempted the perilous swim to shore, a massive search operation ensued. Leveraging their vast resources, the Rockefellers launched one of the most extensive manhunts in history. Despite deploying ships, planes, helicopters, and even enlisting in the U.S. Navy, Michael's fate remained a mystery. Years passed and the search persisted, albeit less intensively. By 1964, 3 years after Michael's disappearance, the Rockefeller family reluctantly concluded that he had likely drowned during his daring swim. The mystery of what truly happened to Michael Rockefeller remains an enduring enigma. As the Rockefeller family eventually came to terms with Michael's presumed death, the story of his disappearance became a widely accepted narrative in America. Michael's sister even wrote a best-selling book about grieving his loss. But in New Guinea, an entirely different tale began to take shape. Rumors about Michael's fate spread through trade routes and among missionaries, making their way into adventure magazines and tabloids. In 1969, 5 years after Michael had been declared dead, an adventure journalist named Milt Macklin caught wind of a startling report. A mysterious Australian contact, a source for the magazine, claimed to have recently encountered Michael in the New Guinea jungle, not far from where he had supposedly disappeared. Despite the unlikeliness of the story, Milt decided to investigate. He traveled to New Guinea with a film crew and scoured the area, speaking with locals, but there was no trace of Michael. Disappointed, Milt returned home and wrote a best-selling book about his quest to find Michael. However, despite having filmed hours of footage documenting the tribes in the region, neither he nor his crew ever reviewed the footage. They had shot the footage while looking for Michael, but without success, they simply put it aside. 40 years later, another documentary team, intrigued by the persistent rumors that Michael was still alive, decided to revisit the case. Before heading to New Guinea, they uncovered the long-forgotten footage from Milt's expedition and watched it. Among the grainy, distant shots, one particular frame stood out: a canoe filled with Asmat warriors, and among them, a naked, bearded white man who, despite the poor quality, bore an uncanny resemblance to Michael Rockefeller. This footage reignited rumors around the world. The tale spread like wildfire. Michael Rockefeller, heir to a billionaire's fortune, had allegedly abandoned his family to live among the Asmat tribe. But was it really Michael? It could have been a missionary or another white man in New Guinea. Still, the story was so captivating that it spread like wildfire. In 2012, 4 years after the footage came to light and more than 50 years since Michael's disappearance, National Geographic journalist Carl Hoffman, fascinated by the mystery, decided to investigate further. He traveled to New Guinea, lived with the Asmat tribe for months, and gained their trust. What he uncovered was a shocking new account of Michael's fate. The Asmat elders shared a chilling story with Carl, warning him that if he revealed the truth, the entire village could be in danger, perhaps even his own life. Undeterred, Carl wrote about it in his book Savage Harvest. Here's the account of what truly happened to Michael Rockefeller. On the morning of November 19, 1961, roughly 24 hours after Michael Rockefeller jumped into the water, embarking on his 5 to 10 mile swim to shore, 3 Asmat tribe elders named Finn, Ajam, and Pep sat with 50 other tribe members in 8 long canoes. They were resting at the mouth of a river that flowed into the Arafura Sea, the very place where Michael's boat had capsized amidst rough waters. The tribespeople, dressed minimally with a few bands around their knees or elbows and intricate piercings in their noses and ears, lounged quietly in their canoes. Some smoked loosely wrapped cigars, while others chewed on sago flower from palm plants. It was a peaceful moment after a long day, until Ajam noticed something unusual moving through the water. He alerted the others. A strange white object was slithering into the river from the sea. A white crocodile? A serpent? He speculated aloud, his voice cutting through the quiet. Everyone turned to look, their curiosity piqued. The tribesmen readied their spears as they cautiously paddled toward the mysterious figure. As they drew closer, their apprehension turned to surprise. The creature was not a serpent or a crocodile. It was a white man, floating on his back with strange flotation devices strapped to him. Michael Rockefeller had finally reached them. The tension dissolved into laughter as the tribesmen lowered their spears. Relieved and exhausted, Michael rolled over and grabbed onto one of the canoes, his face filled with hope. Pep, one of the elders, stared at him and then exchanged meaningful glances with Finn and Ajam. After a silent moment of agreement, Pep helped Michael into the canoe. And once aboard, Michael collapsed into the boat's center, overwhelmed by fatigue but immensely relieved. The tribesmen repositioned themselves, turned their canoes inland, and began paddling up the river. As they moved, the group began chanting in unison, a rhythmic, hypnotic sound that echoed through the stillness. Michael, who had studied Asmat culture extensively, had never heard this particular chant before. Intrigued, he tried to ask about its meaning, but his questions were ignored. The chanting suddenly ceased as the canoes turned into a small inlet, leading to a clearing on the riverbank. Michael, assuming they were approaching the village, looked up, but instead saw only an empty clearing. Confused but hopeful, he waited, eager to find someone who could help coordinate a rescue for his companions. As the tribesmen began disembarking, Michael attempted to communicate, though the language barrier made it impossible to understand each other. Then unexpectedly, one of the men laughed at Michael. The laughter spread until nearly everyone was chuckling. Confused and uneasy, Michael's relief started to give way to a sense of foreboding. The laughter stopped as abruptly as it started. The tribesmen resumed chanting as they stepped onto the shore. Sensing something was amiss, Michael instinctively lay back in the canoe, trying to distance himself from the group. One of the tribesmen, the same man who had laughed earlier, approached Michael with a smile, his spear in hand. Without warning, he raised the weapon and drove it into Michael's side. Michael screamed in agony, unable to muster the strength to defend himself. He rolled to one side, clutching his wound, but the tribesman smiled again and drove the spear into Michael's other side. Despite his excruciating pain, Michael, driven by adrenaline, somehow managed to pull himself over the side of the canoe, collapsing onto the muddy shore. He attempted to stand and escape, but the dense jungle and the surrounding tribesmen left him with no options. Struggling in the mud, 2 tribesmen grabbed him under his arms and began dragging him across the clearing toward the jungle. The haunting, rhythmic chanting continued as they moved, punctuated by the blasts of a horn. The tribesmen hauled Michael into the jungle and stopped at a secluded clearing far from their village. They forced him onto his knees in the center of the clearing. Weak and clutching his sides, Michael was surrounded by the chanting tribe members who formed a circle around him. Suddenly, one tribesman stepped forward, grabbed Michael's head and pushed it forward to expose the back of his neck. Another tribesman approached, raised an axe, and brought it down with force. It was then revealed that the Asmat tribe recognized Michael. They remembered him from his earlier visit, when his attempt to barter for their sacred bispoles, symbols of ancestral spirits, had deeply offended them. To the Asmat, these poles were far more than artifacts. They represented the souls of their fallen warriors, many of whom had been killed by white men in the past. Michael's arrival in their canoe felt to them like a cosmic reckoning. The elders of the village, Finn, Jim, and Pep, quickly agreed that Michael's death would serve as both retribution and a ritual to honor their lost warriors. What followed was a gruesome execution ritual steeped in tradition. After the axe struck Michael's neck, another tribesman stepped in to sever his head with a knife. The tribe then dismembered his body, dividing his organs, flesh, and bones into separate piles. A fire was quickly built, and the tribe began cooking and consuming the remains. Michael's brain, considered the most significant part of the ritual, was reserved for the 3 elders. When the ritual was complete, the tribe preserved the remaining meat in pouches for later consumption. Michael's skull was taken by Finn, who treated it as a trophy, wrapping it in banana leaves, painting it, and displaying it in the village. Days later, when a large search party combed through the area looking for Michael, the tribe remained silent. They feared that revealing the truth would bring devastating retaliation from the West. For decades, the secret of Michael Rockefeller's fate remained buried, until journalist Carl Hoffman uncovered the story and published it in his book, Savage Harvest. Even with Hoffman's revelations, the mystery surrounding Michael Rockefeller persists. Skeptics question the credibility of the tribe's account, and the official narrative, endorsed by both the Rockefeller family and authorities, maintains that Michael drowned while attempting to swim to shore. To this day, the fate of Michael Rockefeller remains a haunting enigma, steeped in intrigue and unanswered questions. And that's the story of Michael Rockefeller, a tale shrouded in mystery, tragedy, and unanswered questions. Did he truly meet his end at the hands of the Asmat tribe, or was it the unforgiving ocean that claimed his life? While the official narrative suggests he drowned, the chilling details uncovered by Carl Hoffman paint a far darker picture. What do you think really happened to Michael Rockefeller? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this episode and want to see more stories like this, don't forget to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to Gloom Ledger. Hit the bell icon to stay updated on our latest uploads. Thank you for watching, and as always, stay curious, stay safe, and we'll see you in the next story.